What is it like to drive during one of the most anticipated and busiest weeks in the history of Minneapolis and St. Paul? Joe here with the Rideshare Guy, and today we're going to discuss my experience driving during Super Bowl week. So I had anticipated last week quite a bit in the months leading up. I had planned in advance to drive double the amount that I usually do, in expectation that prime time would basically be constant throughout the entire week and demand would be crazy and there would be tons of money to be made. Turned out it wasn't quite to the level of expectation that I thought it would be. It was busy, but it wasn't as busy as I thought it would be. And my strategy going into the week was I wanted to drive my normal hours. My normal daytime hours. I figured those hours would be busy enough that I wouldn't have to drive on the weekend or evening hours. And it turns out it would have made more sense to drive during those evening hours when events were happening. Also the weekend, which was when the bulk of the people were in town, the bulk of the visitors were in town for the Super Bowl itself. I had assumed that the entire week would be busy, that people would fly in on, say, Monday. And it turned out that a lot of people actually didn't fly in until the weekend. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that this is Minneapolis, it's cold. People don't want to spend a week in the cold. They just kind of want to get there, they want to experience the events for a couple of days and then get out. So the weekend was pretty busy, but the week leading up wasn't as busy, at least with people out of town. It was still pretty steady, but a lot of locals. I found that on Tuesday actually, I probably gave 6 airport trips to people that were leaving town because they didn't want to be here for the craziness that they thought it would be. But I think Lyft and Uber in general did a good job in anticipation of the week. I found that typically I kind of judged the amount of drivers based on like the airport queue. So the airport queue typically during a regular week has about 30 drivers midday in the queue, and during Super Bowl week, throughout the entire week, there's about close to 90 to 100 drivers in the queue. So triple, almost 4 times the amount of drivers that are normally on the road. Lyft and Uber anticipated the week. They probably, I don't know if they brought in drivers from other markets or brought on a lot of new drivers, but there was a ton more drivers on the road, and maybe a lot of drivers like myself anticipated the week to be busier and thus decided to drive more like I did. So I drove the entire week exclusively for Lyft. I gave 90 rides as opposed to the 45 that I usually give during a normal week. I attained the higher power driver bonus tier than I usually do, and of those 90 rides for the week, I'd say 95% of them were to locals. Only a handful were to Super Bowl related guests from out of town. I'm guessing a lot of this had to do with when I drove. I drove during the day, I didn't drive at night, I didn't drive as much during the weekend. I'm guessing if I would have driven at night and during the weekend, that number of guests from out of town that I would have given rides to would have been quite a bit higher. I did find that the Saturday night that I did drive for a couple of hours, it was really busy downtown Minneapolis. There was prime time in effect, but I also found traffic conditions to be really slow. Even to go just a couple of blocks, it took me 20 minutes in certain areas. So let's jump into my Lyft dashboard. We'll show you my actual numbers. I'll show you what hours I drove during the week and how much I actually made. I made $959.70. I gave 90 rides and I drove for just over 36 hours. Ride payments were $862, tips were $52, bonuses were $38, cancellation earnings were $10, Lyft fees were $177.69, but then I basically recouped those with the power driver bonus as I attained the $175 bonus. Take a look at the bonus calculation details. Like I said last week, I drove double the amount that I typically drive, so I typically attained the $70 bonus. So I'm typically right around 45 rides for the week. Super Bowl week, I did 90 rides. I attained the $175 bonus right on the number, so I gave 90 rides, I gave 40 peak rides, and my acceptance rate was at 94%. We can take a look at the actual hours I drove. Right around 17 of my 36 hours were peak hours. Again, week to week, I concentrate on the AM peak hours, and then I do some PM, so I concentrated on those AM peak hours. I drove right around 10-11 hours on Monday, about 9 hours on Tuesday, about 7 hours on Wednesday. Thursday I hit that AM peak, but I had other obligations so I couldn't drive the full day on Thursday. I drove an additional 9 hours on Friday, and then in order to attain that $175 power driver bonus, I drove some PM hours on Saturday. I believe I had 4 total and peak rides to attain that $175 bonus. We'll go back and we'll take a look at my daily ride counts. So I gave 24 rides on Monday, 18 on Tuesday, 16 on Wednesday, 4 on Thursday, 24 on Friday, and then 4 on Saturday to attain the power driver bonus. So we can take the 959, 70, divide that by, we'll say 36.1. And my hourly rate for the week was right around $26.58. During a typical week, I make around $21 an hour. So this was about a 25% increase in hourly rate. So overall, not too bad of a week. Not quite what I anticipated it would be, but a 25% increase in earnings is not too bad. And if I could do it over again, I probably would have done it the same way. I enjoyed driving during the hours I did. I'm not a big night and weekend driver. So yeah, I wanted to make more. I made 25% more. That's good enough for me. Now, if I did want to make more, quite a bit more, I would have driven evening nights, and I would have driven more on the weekend, because that was when the bulk of the guests were in town as opposed to earlier in the week. And again, another reason that may have been, and probably is because I live in Minneapolis and it's the winter, so it's cold, and people probably didn't want to spend the entire week here. So they flew in during the weekend, got in, got out, enjoyed their time, but that was when the bulk of the action was happening, was during the weekend and not the entire week leading up. And so there's my experience driving in Minneapolis during Super Bowl week. Again, not quite what I expected, but not too bad overall. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, or subscribe, and drive safe.